The product many of us know today as a tampon was originally used by soldiers in the American Civil War. Dr. Shara Vostrel, Assistant Dean of Research at Northwestern University School of Communication, says they'd plug it into a wound to help stop the bleeding.
It really wasn't a commercialized industrial product until the 1930s, where Earl Cleveland Haas got a patent for both the tampon that is literally tamped cotton, just pounded cotton to compress it, and then the applicator.
Tampons were a technology that offered a sense of freedom for women during their periods. But as the product grew in popularity, cases of toxic shock syndrome started rising as well. It's a rare and sometimes fatal bacterial infection. So scientists around the nation worked quickly to try to find the cause, sending all of their results to the CDC.
And then the Centers for Disease Control sort of has this bird's eye view to see what's popping, right? What's happening across the country? Is it typical? Is it atypical? Is it something that rises to national significance? And as things were being reported back, there was one woman in particular named Catherine Shands, and she happened to be one of the epidemiologists there who recognized that something important was happening. Some of the other men in the office said, worry about it. This is a dead end. And she didn't. She kept it up, and it really became she became an important voice within that office as the spokesperson and as the champion to kind of understand what was happening.
2 studies came out of the research. The first identified cases of TSS and how many people were injured or killed by the infection. The second paper connected these cases of TSS to women using super absorbent tampons.
Okay, great. Now we understand, or we know, there is not just a correlation, but a direct connection between superabsorbent tampons and toxic shock syndrome. But how do we warn women about tampons? Well, they're not regulated. There's no test for how absorbent things are. How absorbent is a superabsorbent compared to a regular, compared to a slender? There was no standardization of that at all.
And so the CDC turned to the FDA. In 1976, the FDA passed the Medical Device Amendments, which established regulations for medical devices. Moving forward, any new product would have to prove its safety and efficacy. However, some products like tampons have been grandfathered into this new rule and didn't require further testing.
They'd been on the market since the 1930s. No one presumably had died in this way. And now all of a sudden something was wrong.
That something being super absorbent tampons. But how do these products contribute to toxic shock syndrome? Well, to help understand it, we first need to dissect how a TSS infection starts, which Vostrel says is pretty complex.
In order to contract toxic shock, you first have to carry a particular kind of bacterium in your vaginal microbiome. And that bacterium is called Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus, it's all over your body. You can't avoid it. It's not like we can get rid of it. But some people, it lives on some people's bodies. Other people's bodies repel it. It becomes just part of your microbiome. It likes warm, moist environments. So in some people, it lives in their nose, some it lives in their armpits, some it lives in the vaginal canal.
The second risk factor is having never developed the antibodies that fight against the toxins that staph creates.
There's a whole sector of people, another 30% or so, who, for whatever reason, their immune system just didn't develop that antibody. Most of us do develop it, and some people don't. So if you happen to be a carrier and you happen to not have developed that proper immunity, those are 2 strikes against you. And that would mean you should not use a superabsorbent tampon in particular, and probably not tampons in general. Because if you contract TSS once and then you do it again, it gets worse and worse. So it's cumulative.
The third and final component is the material that makes up the tampon you use. Before the 1970s, Vostrel says the product material hadn't strayed far from the standard cotton. But then there was a shift, and chemicals called superabsorbent polymers were introduced into feminine products. Some brands included polyester foam cubes in the tampons as well. The product design was unique in that it would expand out like a cup to catch the menstrual blood as it flowed out. Vostrel says it worked really well and became a popular product.
The flip side is if you happen to have these cofactors of the bacterium and not having the titer in your blood, then what happened was that you put this Rely tampon into the vaginal canal and the bacteria is there and the tampon brings in air. So it changes from an anaerobic environment to an aerobic environment. So from not oxygen to oxygen. And the bacterium is pretty excited about this. It can live without air, but it also does really well with oxygen. So it kind of gets excited and it starts reproducing. And then if a person pulls out the tampon and puts in a new one, that's just a whole new petri dish in some ways. And there's more air, there's more crevices for it to be and grow. And it's just this totally unfortunate set of circumstances, but that can be deadly for some women. And certainly there were hundreds, if not thousands of women who got sick and many who did die as well.
So something had to be done. At the request of the FDA, the American Society for Testing and Materials created the Tampon Task Force in 1982. It brought together industry representatives and consumer advocates. The Boston Women's Health Book Collective was part of the consumer side and known for promoting the betterment of women's health outcomes.
And so it's everything from understanding the way birth control is working, not having to have 3 or 4 men sort of sign off on your decisions about your body for medical treatments, being able to talk back to your physician. So that was a really activist group. And part of their charge as well was safety. And so to have them, the Tampon Task Force was really important because they provided a voice for pushing back and saying, actually, we need standards that are understandable and that make sense that women can follow.
They needed to create a testing process that could easily be replicated across the industry.
The standard has to be standardized. And this is a really important part of the story is like, how do you do that? And industry had been using this test called the Syngina test to see how absorbent tampons were. And it was a lab apparatus made out of a glass sort of set of tubes, and they used actually a condom on the inside to recreate the inside of the vagina. And then to recreate menstrual fluid, they also used either saline, which often was dyed blue, or they created a saline solution called blue goo that was made out of carboxymethylcellulose and salts.
The logic behind using these solutions is that they could be replicated the exact same way in any lab. But no one seemed concerned that while it met the standards for recreation, it didn't accurately represent menstrual fluid or the women who desperately needed this research. So the Boston Women's Health Book Collective brought in scientist Nancy Ream to test tampons with real blood.
She was using heparinized blood, which doesn't clot because you need it to still flow. And she did that with these tests. And what she found was that the Syngina test with the saline and the Syngina test with blood, the tampons were the same order of absorbency. So whatever was the most absorbent was still the most absorbent. So most absorbent to least absorbent was the same with both tests.
Which is great news. The issue is that when tested with blood, some tampons absorb more than they did the saline solution. So the tampon you buy from the store may be much more absorbent than is shown on the box. But why is that an issue? Many people would think that it's getting a better bang for your buck. But as Vostrel mentioned earlier, the more absorbent tampons increase your risk for toxic shock syndrome. Unfortunately, the Tampon Task Force wasn't able to sway the industry into using real blood to test products, mainly because the process wouldn't be as easy to recreate in labs, which means that this testing error is still built into today's system.
Blood is different. It's not as convenient. I mean, it totally should be blood. But if you're thinking in terms of efficiency and optimization in a lab, that was the prime directive, not necessarily what happens out in the real world.
But should efficiency matter more than the product being properly tested for its main consumer?
Who is using this? I mean, that's the thing. Who is the end user? And it's not the mice. It's women, it's menstruators, it's all sorts of people in regular life who have bodies, who are walking around, and having a period is really, it's a human thing. It's ubiquitous. It happens every day. Like, this is not an outlandish thing. So there's really no other reason besides these logics of optimization that work. and preference for eliminating these variables, but it totally obfuscates what's actually happening. So the science is not that good then. I mean, this is the part that's the problem. Like, in order to improve the science, you have to make room for the variables. And so you have to figure out a different way to do it. It's just because our bodies are not going to conform. We can't bend our bodies to be the lab model. We don't bleed salt.
Join us next week to meet the doctor that's reimagined the scope of female research. You can find more information about Dr. Shara Vostrel and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. I'm Elizabeth Westfield. This segment is brought to you by the Capital One Venture Card. Earn unlimited 2x miles on every purchase. Plus, earn unlimited 5x miles on hotels and rental cars booked through Capital One Travel. Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Coming up.